In an honest response, when you came back to the United States, the difference between the way a Haitian responded to training and discipleship and the way you tend to watch Americans respond to training and discipleship. And to be even more, I want you to, I know you want to answer with grace and those kind of things, but what's the biggest question that you had as you came back and served and were a part of No Place Left US for a little while? What's one of the big questions you had?
Yeah, from our limited perspective is the people that we're connected to, and most of our perspective is social media too. The things that we came back, the things that we saw celebrated were we saw people receive training in order to become an event trainer. And in our perspective, there was this, the contrast is, I train a new believer in Haiti. He doesn't have an venue to go do a 4-day. No one wants to listen to his 4-day. He just becomes a doer. Like, he's just hitting the harvest. He starts a church week 1, and then he's coming back to me like, okay, what do we do next? We just covered the first 4 commands. What's next? They're in the trenches, like just doing the work.
And that's, all of them. I mean, Joshua's not going around doing trainings, and there's many networks that don't know Joshua. I mean, there's, generationally down his stream, most do not know Joshua. So it's just very much, let me just pour into those who I'm in day-to-day contact with. And then that just gets passed on. So even all the tools and gen mapping and all that, that's just been passed down just with the 139, like that.
Yeah, I think, the Lord just protected, he's protecting it by almost restricting their travel. Like, he's using it. Like, they don't have the ability to go places, just geographically. They're going to spend a lot of money in taxis, or they're going to walk there, and so we've literally coached them, like, don't go beyond further than you can walk. And so that's allowed them to really just commit to multiplication, because they can't really go downstream if they even wanted to, beyond, a couple generations downstream. And so, the Lord is using it to allow them to just labor faithfully where they're at, and pour into the few that he's given them, and to see that they reproduce the same thing.
And I don't know if Jacob mentioned it already, but, God kind of orchestrated things even within our home, to where I was bedridden during the peak of the explosion of the movement in Haiti. And whereas we probably would have gone out of our home and done more things, I think because that example was set of in-home training with just your oikos, basically, that went across the network as well. And that is a big difference that we do see in the States, that we've noticed personally just by being a part of some trainings and whatnot, is that there can tend to be a confusion when you're being trained in a large facility, or specifically maybe a church building, but being told to scrap that, go to your home and begin, worshiping in the home. And so we did notice that there could be some confusion, even in that. And so we like to just try to do everything just within our home to eliminate that confusion.
Like, battles can be won. Battles need to be fought for laborers in the legacy churches and at event trainings. But the war is won in the neighborhoods and in the living room. That's where we're going to see movement. And so that's where that's where we need to labor, right? So
part of the reason I brought it up, Jacob, is not necessarily, as you said, it's not a criticism of what's going on in the U.S., but just a recognition of what God was doing in Haiti. And just because it's a little bit different doesn't mean we're saying one's right and one's wrong, but we're just a way of celebrating what we saw happen, in those guys' lives in Haiti.
We need to high five obedience and not focus on they're not doing this, or they need to stay away from this or whatever, but to just look towards obedience and keep our minds focused on obedience. And so we do need to remember that as we come back. I think when we come back to the States, we do have maybe different expectations too, for those laborers here.
Yeah, I think, every time I talk to Troy Cooper about these conversations, he always says, encourage, never criticize. So a lot of effort being done. But then I would even caution, maybe too much effort is being done. I had 5 different men pull me aside at different times during the week and tell me my marriage is falling apart. And that was alarming, to hear about how MPL was driving a wedge between husband and wife, father and children. And man, that's when you put on the brakes. You put the car in park and figure out what's happening. And we've left a key piece behind somewhere. If this is not a family affair, if this is not a family on mission, then we've done something bad wrong. And so that's, again, that's why, we emphasize community so much, because when you emphasize community, then you're going to elevate the role of the family, because things are done out of the home. And so, I want to celebrate the effort, and then maybe even caution, if you're doing so much effort that your family's falling apart and your life's a mess, then you're not quite getting the idea of the 139, or the idea of the principle of multiplication and being faithful where God's placed you. No. So to a family that's fallen apart because they're pursuing no place left, I would coach that person and just say, go at the pace of the family. Be obedient to Jesus. Go at the pace of your family.
Something that I just get discouraged with while we're in the States is just sometimes that distraction of day-to-day life. And then Jacob and I coming back together and just saying, who are we? This is who we are. We are worshipers, and this is why we do what we do. And you know what? It's okay to spend a whole day alone with God. And as a matter of fact, that's what we're, designed for. And so putting aside, what does success and productivity in ministry look like? We've got to change that view and just realize that our obedience and our worship is enough.
Mm-hmm. So I heard about some of the guys in Detroit who shared the gospel 30,000 times last year and saw 7 people come to know Jesus or something, And then here, we were in Haiti faced with the opposite, but still knowing that for us, it wasn't strategic for us to make a disciple. Because we weren't cultural insiders, and then so with that then came all kinds of issues, and I could list off a dozen, but language and culture and all kinds of different things that wouldn't be strategic. So we knew we had to share the gospel, make disciples out of obedience and worship. It's a lordship issue, not a strategic issue. And so, I think it's the same then, for a different reason, but it's the same thing. So we're hearing about, our cousins having dreams and visions of Jesus, coming to the doors of some existing near culture believers, and they're being turned away because these believers that are in the country are fearful of the government and what might happen to them. And
specifically their material possession that might be taken.
Yeah, because so like that breaks our hearts. That's happened all around the world, where there's the low hanging fruit, and we just finished mango season here in Florida, and we wept over every mango that went bad because we cherished those mangoes. They were so good. And every mango that got rotten because it didn't get picked in time, or it fell on the ground and rotted, like it broke our hearts, right? And I think about all the fruit that's waiting all around the world. And, I remember about a guy in Africa who once told my dad, after receiving the gospel in his 80s, in the jungles and the bush of Africa, having never heard the gospel, received Jesus one day, told my dad, "What took you so long? I've waited my whole life to hear this message," right? So when we talk about the hard soil in the U.S., that's just naturally where my heart goes then, is where the fish are jumping in the boat. Would you fault us for doing any of those things that Jesus told us to do? If we can clearly define the work as what Jesus modeled, you could take, his, John 4 to John 17 example of the work that he fulfilled, the work called to do, the work he fulfilled, as the same work from Acts 13 to 14 in Paul's first journey. The work they were called to do, sent out by the Holy Spirit, and the work they fulfilled is the work of the sent out one, the missionary. Okay, so we can use the word apostle or the word of missionary, but then we got to face the reality of John 17, the John 17 vision, when he says, "Father, as you sent me, I'm sending them," right? And then John 17:20, "I don't pray for these only, these 11 in the room, but for all those who will believe in me through their word." There's a calling there beyond, I've even heard people argue about the Great Commission and who it was actually meant for, because maybe it was just the 12 there, or the 11 there, maybe it was a few others. You can't argue with John 17. Like, there's a clear calling for every disciple of Jesus to do what? As the Father sent Jesus, so we've been sent, in the same way that Jesus was sent. So in order for us to understand our purpose in life, the central purpose for our existence, is to look at, what did Jesus do? What did he do during those years? That's exactly what I'm called to do. And so there's that reality that regardless of the fruit, the Lord who gives the growth, here is the job of the worker. And Lord, we've only done our duty, as his laborers.